Welcome to the Home Studio Hangout podcast, where we explore what it's like building, running, and working out of a home studio with your hosts, Joshua Matotek, Andrew Simmons, and many guests in different areas of the music industry.
And welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I am here with my friend and co-host Joshua Matotek, and we are here, Josh, with our good friend Aaron Pace.
Hey, what's up?
So what's up, Aaron?
Hi. Howdy.
Aaron and Josh have had the pleasure of working together.
Howdy.
Boy, howdy.
Me and Aaron have had the pleasure of meeting online for the first time today.
That is true.
So that is factual. We've been around each other and worked with similar bands, but have never
crossed paths.
Never crossed
That sounds
paths.
very
So
threatening. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean it like that.
I don't know. I think that's...
We've always been two ships in the night.
Yeah, right. Ships passing. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, so we're just to chat with Aaron about production and songwriting and fun stuff. But to start us out, AP, give us the beginning of how'd you get into this whole production game thing?
Oh boy. I feel like it's a pretty standard story, right? I was in a really terrible band, the worst band I can think of, and then it was worse than that. If you can imagine, someone who hadn't grown into their voice yet, doing inhale screams over bad Kill Switch ripoff, this was that. So that's fun for me, and
Mid-2000s,
right.
baby.
And
Let's
also,
go.
no
Ride.
copies of those recordings exist, so don't look for them, and I won't share them with you. And we were like, oh, we'll go to the studio, whatever. And we won some studio time in, a contest or something. Somehow. Okay, we must not have been that bad, but we were terrible. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, so, we went to the studio, and it was this place, I think it was in, some wild-ass place, I don't know, way out in the sticks. And this guy was like, all right, well, you guys won, 18 hours of studio time. It'll probably take you about 48 to get one song done. So we'll probably just go ahead and get started on whatever. And we were like, oh, well, how much is it to get more time? Because we only have this and we don't have any money. And he was like, some number or whatever. And we're like, that's nothing. Goodbye. And then we left and we didn't use the time that we had. And then I straight up went pawn shopping after that to get a hard disk recorder, and that's how I started. Was straight up an old fashioned Tascam CD guy. No joke, the oldest sort of functionality thing that I could think of, and I found that and I did that for a while. And it was the same thing, which is a band was too broke to go to a real thing, so then they were like, I'll do it. This is fine. And then it was just me doing a bunch of metal records for a long time, and then local bands or whatever. And then finally I was like, oh, this isn't my genre. I'm just here because that's what I was in. And then started branching out and writing after that. So it's two real serious phases where I thought I was doing metal for real, that was what I thought I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some cool stuff. I did that Left to Suffer record. And I did some work for Josh Schroeder at Random Awesome. So I did some editing on In Heart's Wake, and I think I did a 2x4 record and some Lorna Shore stuff. And so that is cool. And I still do metal from time to time, but I think there was a spot where I was where is my passion at? And it's in, pop stuff. It's in, even the crossover pop rock stuff, I feel is something. So then that's what I've been doing for the last probably 4 or 5 years, I guess. So yeah, I definitely came in it at a weird spot because I was a singer first, and then a weird fiddly guy, and then I forgot to learn how to play an instrument somewhere in there. So I still don't know how, which is...
Yeah, we have a very similar timeline. That's exactly how it went for me. It's I started.
I was gonna say it seems very similar to Josh's.
Was it a Boss? I think it was a Boss 8 track that they sold with the built-in microphone. That thing is sick. I just saw it at my dad's house whenever I was home a couple weeks back. And so I think I'm going to steal that back and do something with it. To the point where, like, I was thinking about, like, how sick it was just to, like, press record and, like, sit down with a guitar, you know? And because, like, the other week, like, I was just, like, sitting there and I was like, I should buy one of those Zoom recorders. Just get out of it, you know, and like not have to like look at my phone, you know, like, and yeah, I started there, and then I just kind of like did metal, and I thought that I was doing metal, and I did like a little bit of stuff, and then I was like, you know what, I want to write
anything else,
songs that aren't metal.
yeah.
And now I feel really bad because like I still have a lot of friends who are like, you know, like came up in the genre or whatever, and so like they'll be playing me stuff, and they're like, look how sick this new record is, and I'm like, I hate all of this.
I mean,
I'm very bored of everything.
And I think too, like, you know, like for me, it's like there was a phase when I think when I first sort of like got out of the metal world where I had so oversaturated with it that I was literally like, everything metal is bad and I hate it all, and if I hear it, I'll die. And then like I've come back around to the spot where it's like, no, I was just doing, you know, 10 years or whatever, or like 8 years of work, constantly busting my ass on a genre that like was never my first love. That's not where I grew up. That's not the space that I, you know, like wanted to inhabit. It just happened to be where I was. And it's also not what I listened to on the daily, right? Like, you know, when I was in a metal band for some reason, like it was because my friends were in a metal band. It wasn't because I was like so in love with it. Whereas there are people who truly have like a passion for that form of art, and like those people are sick, and that stuff comes through in a way that like, you know, in any art form, it's like the same kind of thing, right? It's like you can see where the real passion is, but like I was just doing that because that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And now I feel like I'm not doing that anymore.
See, that's not how it was like for me. It was like I was like super into it, and then like but
he got burnout mainly.
Yeah, I just got like super burnout because like I was doing like my own band stuff for a little bit, but like where I lived I couldn't find like consistent members and all that stuff, and so I just called it off. And then I started like writing and producing for like other metal bands. And like the stuff was super cool, and like people really liked it, but I just couldn't find anybody that like took it seriously or like didn't just like take the stems and then like ruin the song afterwards. And I was just like, you know what, like I could be like really good at this, you know, but you know, like I still get like subscribers to like my YouTube channel from one video that I put up, and like people messaging me like asking me to work, and I'm like, I just don't do that anymore.
How was this is something me and Josh talk about sometimes, but how was the transition for you from like I primarily do heavier music to I'm gonna primarily not do heavy music anymore? I know for Josh it was like kind of a harder transition. You basically went cold turkey, Josh, if I remember correctly. You basically were like, I'm not doing any of it anymore, I'm only doing this now.
During the pandemic. So
mine is a much softer transition because like I still have my foot in that world. It's always been a thing too where sorry about that. It's always been a thing too where like from the jump, because my first love wasn't metal, right? I was bringing my pop thought processes to metal from the jump anyway. So then the whole time everyone was like, "Oh, we go to Aaron because he doesn't listen to metal," right? So then it was easy enough for me to just continue that trend and basically be like, you know, I you know, I still do metal stuff on occasion, and like I'm a lot more selective about it now, because I just like, because there's a lot of that stuff out there, and I feel like if it's not sort of like doing anything for me, I don't sort of pursue it as much anymore. But it was definitely a softer transition. It's been a thing where, you know, I've pushed some of the bands that listen to me in that kind of like zone a little closer to the crossover kind of stuff, and then I started doing you know, writing with projects and stuff that were more in the pop world, but it's never been so stark, whereas like I know, yeah, like Josh, you said you sort of like did a hard turn. And I think about like a lot of guys that started in the same kind of space. There's a lot of us, like, and then there's a hard turn. For me, it's always been like a weird kind of soft turn, and there's nothing I could do about it. It just is what it is. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also kind of did that because it's like I wasn't like super established. You know what I mean? It's like I kept fighting to like get bigger artists and all that stuff, and like none of it really like panned out in the way that I wanted it to. And like in a lot of ways, like I was sitting there and I was like, it's pretty easy. You could do this genre really well if you just write metal songs, like they're pop songs. And so I was doing that, and then I was like, you know what? Like, fuck this. I'm just gonna go ahead and
do something else.
Hard transition, because like, what's the point of trying to be known as like the metal guy if I could go do this and like actually like make money doing it.
And I will say for Josh, it worked really well because his hard pivot immediately yielded results for him in some capacity. Right.
Yeah,
it wasn't necessarily
I didn't really write a pop song until 2020.
Yeah,
like I've only been doing this for like 3 years. So it's been cool.
Yeah, as far as like that transition, I think me and you probably sit in a more similar vein, Aaron, where it's like I grew up in that like heavier world, playing bands and all that kind of stuff, and then now it's like I do a lot of stuff.
Whatever.
Like I do pop stuff, I do post-hardcore and heavier like deathcore stuff, but then that's a little more rare, and then I'm doing a lot of hip hop now, just because that's where my larger numbers is in that world. So yeah, it's just what I get. But like I'm not necessarily saying no to stuff. It's more so I think I'm
pursuing
just like
different,
pursuing different things. Like what I put
what moves
out
the needle
generally yields.
Yeah,
exactly. It tends to return the same kind of thing.
So yeah, I mean, that's really similar.
So
that's why and I think in this case it was like a thing where like for a bit coming off of the heels of doing that Left to Suffer stuff and whatever, like there was a bit of that like weird transitional phase where I would be in these things.
Yeah, because that song freaking
and, like,
popped off.
Where these things would happen, and then like people were like, "But aren't you like a metal guy?" And I was like, "Oh no, not the metal guy. No, hold on, no," because the whole time, I've been the pop guy to metal kids, and then all of a sudden, I'm the metal guy to pop people, and I'm like, "No, wait, no." But at the same time, like it is.
Yeah. I mean, I get it from an outsider's point of view, but it really sucks that it can't just be like, I like working on music, and I kind of do whatever makes me like
whatever cool shit is making me happy today.
Happy and work. Yeah, exactly. Like I wish it could be like that from a business perspective. You can't. It's hard to do that.
Sure.
I feel like not many people get that done really well.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I've been taking some time to like really figure out like who do I want to be, in 5 years,
like as a producer and as a person.
Yeah, because it's like I don't know. I've done so many like different things, and I'm good at like a fair bit of things. But like, what it really comes down to, I think, is that like all I want to do is make my shitty little indie songs, And so I think I'm just going to like keep pushing for that. And like there's so much of it right now, and it's all doing really, really, really well as far as like streaming goes. And it's like, it's super viable, and there's a ton of it, like especially in the South, like in Nashville. And like, I just think that is like, cause like I was talking about it with Madeline the other day, and she was just like, well, like, what do you love doing the most? And I was like, well, this is what I love doing the most. She's like, so why don't you just do that? And I was like,
don't you love
that's a good point.
Like
I could just go do that.
Yeah, dude. What? Okay, like partners are so good at this thing. It is mind-boggling because I'll be like, I'll be mixing something or whatever, and I'm like knee deep in like the most terrible funk of imaginable, right? And I'm like so pissed off, and I'm not like eating and I'm not drinking, whatever. And she's like, "Hey, what's up? Why are you like upset?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm like mixing this record I don't want to do anymore, and like it's not the kind of genre I don't, whatever it is." And she's like, "Have you thought about not doing it anymore?" And I was like,
"Genius."
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. What do you mean not do? What do you mean? Like, don't take on a project that is not a good fit for my mixing or whatever? And she's like, yeah, like, man. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, wait, I could do that. Well, it's one of those things where it's like, where like this industry's so like work centric, where it's like,
we get so locked into it.
You're supposed to do everything,
Right. Just do anything that comes at you.
Yeah, it's like right now, like, I'm just like focusing on like the projects that like I really, really want to do, that are fun to me. Like I always tell Lee, and he hates it. I'm like, dude, I hate writing pop punk. Like I hate it.
That's
He's
fair,
like, well, you're really good at it. And I was like, but it's not fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then like I played him some stuff that I was doing with this artist named Jay, who's like about to start dropping, and he's like, I thought you said you hated pop punk, and I was like, but like this is different. Because like we didn't set out to write pop punk,
right,
all of our songs started as like an acoustic guitar, and like we're singing over it, and like they all feel like pop songs. And then whenever it came time to produce them and cut vocals, then like it slowly evolved to that point, and it felt natural. Right. It's not like I was forcing myself to be in this headspace,
Right.
And so that's something I'm trying to get a little bit more in tune with also, where it's like, the songs that come out with my name on them aren't necessarily like something that I consciously did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think about that a lot more too, because that's kind of interesting.
Be intentional about what your thing is.
I do think that is growing up as a producer, right? Is having that aha moment of I can just like not do work that I don't want to. That's a pretty pivotal moment, I think, as a producer. We're shifting, and even like as a mix engineer, kind of across the industry, even as a songwriter really, too. It's it's like
it's just like
I don't want to do this, so I'm gonna not.
Yeah,
and also then you also have good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it also benefits the people that you turn down, right? Like, I know that seems so esoteric, but it's a thing where like, if you were not going to be a good fit as the producer, mixer, songwriter, what have you, because your heart's not in it, then whatever kind of bullshit you were going to come up with is probably not going to be as good as the person who is going to care about it a lot, right?
Yes,
and like
100%.
It's like once you click that, where you're like, oh, they don't need me because I don't want to be there, then that's a good moment for you too, because then it's a context where like you can be like, hey man, like, I don't think I can put my whole ass into this. So find somebody that can. And make sure that they care about it as much as you do, because that's the bit, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you know somebody, that really enjoys that thing, like you can send them there. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Help out the homie.
It's definitely something that I think a lot of people run into, and it's always just because it's like, oh, work,
Right. Work is work.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So I've just been like focusing on like getting back to like what I really, really love and pushing for that, because it's like, if we're going to do this, like, okay, like our alternatives, right, are to go work a 9 to 5.
Right.
And it's like,
no.
I could work a relatively fulfilling 9 to 5. Like, I'm great at sales.
Sure.
I would be so happy doing that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I can make, a great living off of that. And so it's like, but the whole time I'll be like, oh, but I could be doing music. So it's like, while I'm doing music, why would I put myself in the position where I'm doing work that isn't fulfilling?
100%.
Because it's like, at that point, you're better off just picking up whatever job you could pick,
I mean, I mean, like, I think that's the other thing that, like, with the partner sort of like randomly snapping you out of it thing happened to me a few times, which was like, I was, really deep in, like I was saying, like part of that transition was like my transition into this sort of pop, whatever, all kinds of non-metal genres, right? A big part of that transition was straight up like I was down all the time because I was taking on a bunch of work and I was like doing it good, like, you know what I mean? Like as good as you can, but it's the kind of thing where like, it was taking a toll on me because it wasn't where my heart was at. And at some point, my beautiful, lovely wife goes, "Hey, why are you doing that?" She's like, "If you're going to be miserable, would you rather be miserable with like a steady paycheck then?" And I was like, "Oh." And she's like, "So if you're going to go for the sort of like, ephemeral sort of like independent contractor vibe, why not just do stuff you like?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good point." Because it's like, would you rather be miserable working on stuff you hate and then also not knowing when the next paycheck is going to come? Or would you like to like, figure that out? So yeah, that was a big shift for me.
Another like weird angle is like, you talked about it a little bit when you were like, "Oh no, not the metal guy."
Right.
It's like, I feel like oftentimes we have to like tiptoe around like what we're like putting out into the world because like you're going to become known as like that dude.
Right.
And that's something that really scares me. Like moving to Atlanta, like obviously like hip hop is huge.
Right.
Like, I love hip hop. I love working on hip hop. I really love mixing hip hop. And I also love producing it.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm sitting here and it's like, I'll be like cooking up beats for fun. And I'm like, but do I send them out? Because the last thing that I want to be known for is being a beat maker.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah. That's a reasonable thing to think.
You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
It's like, I mean, no, like that's not to like talk to
no.
people who
but
are
that's,
beat makers.
No, that's just not what you want to do.
It's just that's going to be that would be your lane, right? There are people whose whole passion is making sick ass beats every day, but if that's not who you want to be, then you need to be careful about how many beats you send out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to who, like, and like having a BeatStars account or only pitching to direct to artist, or like how you approach that entire world,
the shape of it,
and what you want to do changes. What you want to do changes how you approach doing the work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like ultimately like I don't like I want to still like be in that space, but like I think I do really good at like
guitar
music side of all that. And so I think I'm just gonna wait until I'm able to like effectively send out packs of just guitar loops.
And
also not get ripped off.
I'm waiting for the Josh Splice pack
because like that's a whole nother thing. It's like
you should.
I probably should do that. I have so many
guitar loop pack. Yeah, dude.
So
I would take a guitar loop pack from Josh just to make beats off of.
All right.
Yeah. I might 100%.
Do it. Aaron, so you had a cool instance of writing a dope song with our buddy Josh Landry, Mind of Mine. Let's talk about how that came about.
The Low Spirit stuff is such a wild kind of whirlwind thing because it was the situation where Josh was like, I guess he was on Facebook and was straight up like, "Hey, is there anyone around here that's sick at writing stuff that I haven't hung out with and tried writing with before?" And I was like, "Me." And I was like, "We have a lot of the same friends."
Yeah.
Me. And so then he was like, "All right, well, let's go then." And then I went to his apartment at the time, which was nearby. I think it's, wherever it was. I don't give a shit. And then we sat down, first time ever meeting each other, and both trauma dumped on each other for about 4 hours. We didn't write any songs. We just, like you do, just word vomited every bad thing that had happened to us. And then we wrote a song, verse chorus in about like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then I went home. And then we did that again another like a week or two later, and And that song is Mine to Mine. The second song we wrote was Mine to Mine. It was literally the second time we'd met each other, just another trauma dump. And he was basically like, hi, I'm scared to death of what my mental illness means and what it says about me and what it will mean when I have a kid and all this kinds of things. And like, that is scaring me so much right now. I don't know what else to do but write about it. And I was like, well, let's write about it then. The long story short is that a lot of times when I end up getting called in to do these kinds of things, these kind of songwriting situations, it's like most of the time is someone is like, hey, I need to write a song that's so sad that it makes me cry. And they're like, can you just let me funnel my trauma into you for a few hours? And I'm like, yes, this seems good and normal and not weird at all.
Not and or unhealthy.
No, that would be crazy if it was.
Yeah.
I would need like therapy or something if it was, but thankfully, since it's not, I don't, and I'm fine and everything's cool and normal and good. And I love it. And so, yeah. And that's how Mine to Mine came about. It was kind of a whirlwind thing too, because we did it, we got the chorus and first verse done. And then, second verse kind of came together, I think at a later date. But we put up, he put up a TikTok of the chorus, and we weren't sure if it was going to do anything. We weren't sure if it was going to resonate with people, and it did.
I remember that one being, he had a, he has pretty consistent pop-offs on TikTok and whatnot, but I remember distinctly that one doing extra well.
Yeah, and I think too, for him, it was like the first time that one of the ones that had sort of done some TikTok numbers. Like, I don't want to talk numbers because I like that stuff gets so confusing for me anyway.
Yeah,
but,
it
like,
does.
It was something that like looked cool for him because it was the first time that I think an original had done as well on TikTok as some of his covers, and he was like,
some of his bigger covers.
Well, maybe this is something. Yeah. And so then, like pretty instantaneously, management on the phone, like, hey, you have to finish this yesterday, and I'm like, what? We just started it. And okay. So then, pretty quickly after that, it was, like, I think 2 days back to back of production stuff. And then I think we took it to Johnny Andrews for, the bridge, because we weren't sure how we wanted to do that. And then that's where I think the second verse kind of came together there too. And then because Josh was like experimenting with, letting somebody else take the reins on the Low Spirit stuff, I ended up like finishing out production and mixing it.
I was going to ask you if you ended up mixing it.
Yeah. I did. And it was like a weird thing because it was like literally like, they had already secured everything for release. So it was like my first true deadline. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things where like the deadline is like vague insofar as like the band's like, hey, or artist is like, can we really get it by X day? Because in order for us to get it to distro and get the blah, 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 whatever. Like, but those kinds of deadlines. But it's
a pretty loose deadline or a bendable.
It's loose because if you hit them, the day of and they've got one more revision, it's not going to kill them if they have to get it, the following day or whatever.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was straight up like, hey, everything's already set for release. Like this needs to be turned into distro by X day. Period. And that was a whole thing. So I mixed it like literally the day after, and then we were I think Josh and I did like a Skype revisions, and then that was it, and then it was like printed and done. It was kind of crazy in that regard, and like I was trying my best to sort of like impart as much or like get as much like odd non-traditional rock flavor into the mixing side and the production side as possible, because that's just like I tend to do that naturally, because I think that if there's something compelling about a rock song, it's not that it's not the traditional trappings of rock, right? Because every other song also has that thing. Yeah. If it's going to be compelling, it's going to be the things that make it kind of weird and kind of different. And so like I wanted to do my best. Like obviously, it is still at the end of the day like a rock song with pop top line, right? Like I whatever. I'm not trying to bloviate about that, but it's the thing where like I was trying my best to make sure that it felt like a cross between what he had done before and where he might be able to go.
You did a really good job of matching because I know he kind of has like his production style, and you did I think you did a very good job of not matching it necessarily, but doing something that is inherently you in the same vein of like, this is kind of something that he would do, but let's expand upon that idea a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. Because that was kind of the bit, right? Like I was tasked with this thing, which is like he has such a strong through line for his stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so innately his style that I had to be careful about how much I could deviate, because it was like I need it to sound like he still needs to sound like him at the end of the day, right? Because that's what the bit is.
That's something that's really, really interesting. Like whenever you're working with somebody who's new to you, but they kind of already have like this established brand, and like figuring out how you can like fit in with also like kind of pushing them, you know? Because like I feel like
absolutely,
like I'll use Jay as an example. Like he's a new artist. Like he did like some rock covers that did really well of like pop songs, right? Like that's it. So like the producer who was working with him at the time like brought me into everything. So when I got the call, it was like, hey bro, like I'm working with this dude, like it's gonna be like a new artist project. It's gonna be like, you know, like in like the Jaden like MGK kind of lane. And then like I showed up and like I thought that like he already had like a ton of songs, and like I thought that he had releases planned, all that stuff. And so I was like, all right, yeah. And then like this part, like, you know, we could do like, you know, like real drums here. And he's like, no, like I like the original idea, like trap drums. And I was like, really? You know? And so like that was like really relieving, like being able to be like, oh, let's see how far I can push this. I did one production where like the whole thing is a bit. Like when we were writing it, I was like, how funny would it be if like we did like a super like almost like Taylor Swift song, and then like evolves into like this like arena rock kind of thing, you know? And so like the whole thing, like from the writing to the production to how we cut the vocals, it was all basically under like the idea that like we're gonna have this dude who's like a goth influencer singing this super bubbly song about how he's the worst, you know? Because he doesn't take himself seriously, which I really admired. And I was like, well, like we should probably like portray that, you know? And I ended up pushing it way too far. And I mean, I was like, I called up Lee and I was like, hey man, so here's the deal. I've heard this song way too much, and we got to get it closer to these other ones. And he just kind of sat on the couch.
Take it out of my hands, please.
Yeah, he was playing video games. He was like, "Nah, delete that track. Delete that track. Delete that track. Add this in." You know, and I was like, "Okay." But it was so much fun, you know. And like I told him, I was like, "Look, this is gonna be like really out there. So let me know if you hate it." And everybody listened to her like, no, we liked it. It wasn't until they started getting the marketing plan together that they were like, all right, this needs to be different, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Because the song would only really work if there was like a full video and like all that stuff, and they aren't doing a video for that song.
They don't have the money for that.
Yeah,
release.
so we had to change it. But like being able to like really push somebody like from like the whole like production side of things is like so much fun, and I think that that's like something that like keeps me going, you know,
for sure. You know, like and I think in this go ahead. Sorry,
no, you go ahead. I was gonna let you talk.
I was just saying, like, you know, like it kind of goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier, which is like, you know, what moves the needle for you emotionally and sort of spiritually, right? Like what pushes that feeling like, oh, this is something, right? Like I'm making stuff with this artist or with my, you know, by myself, whatever, that like that is out of nothing, right? And that feeling of like pushing people in a direction that's like somewhere they clearly want to go, but they're afraid of it, or they haven't thought of going in that direction before, is like such a like a beautiful ephemeral thing that like I can't really describe to people who don't do this job. And it's nice to be able to like talk about it, you know, anytime we can talk shop is sick, because it's like we do such weird jobs. Like it's so weird. Like if you think about it for even a small amount of time, you're like, that's so odd. Like, why is it like this? You know? But like, I'm also thankful because like, it's this kind of situation where like, you know, when I wrote Mind of Mine with Josh, and this other one that he's currently working on that we wrote together. That was the first time we met.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be crazy. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but it's one of those things where like he was like, look, man, I've always poured a lot of myself into this, right? But there's always a guard up because there has to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you write very emotional music, which has a time and a place. Like some people don't do that, but some people do, and it is what it is. So I pour myself into this, but I always have my guard up because there's a point at which, it feels too raw or too real about what I'm, who I am and what I'm about, whatever. He's like, I want to break that this time. So can we do that? Here's literally everything I'm afraid of right now. Boom, here you go. And I was like, well, then put it on paper. Like that's the real shit, right?
Yeah,
that's the truth of who you are and what you're about. Let's do it.
Yeah. What he's going through right now.
And
for sure.
obviously, right. And not every song needs to be that, but the times that it is where you truly can open up whatever channel to the source is and sort of put that stuff down is really, really cool. And I definitely don't need therapy about it. Anyway.
No. So I think talking about producing and mixing and stuff like that, let's slide from songwriter talk to fun production and mixing talk. What is something, let's do this first. What's something recently that you found from a producing or mixing standpoint that you're like super stoked on right now?
Okay. I can start because I started a thing and I don't know, I didn't mean to exactly, but it's kind of sick. Josh and Lee seem to be a fan of this thing. But I realized that there's something really cool about if you boost the fundamental on any drum, right? And we all do this thing. And it's pretty standard mixing technique, whatever. But I have also found that if you boost the octave below that and the octave above that in varying different amounts through a saturator or a saturating EQ, in this case, I use Spectre, which is like a weird thing that is a parallel saturating thing that only works on certain bands or whatever.
Yeah.
It's by Waves Factory. But basically, you can introduce weight into a signal that maybe wasn't there before, and you can reinforce it in a way that sounds much more natural. One thing that I hate about a lot of hate's such a strong word, but something that I've noticed that seems a little fuzzy to me is that a lot of metal mixes and rock mixes have a crap ton of 200 in the snare, so much that it doesn't sound like a snare anymore. It sounds like a resonating 200 hertz boost, and then some
with some
it's
blap.
And then there's also on top, and it's well, that's not what snares
like
sound,
a white noise generator with 200 hertz boost.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And then to the point of what very early samplers sounded like, right? Which is here's a 200 hertz sine wave, and then also some on top, I guess. And to me, that's not where we're trying to go necessarily. Me personally is not where I'm trying to go. So what I noticed was, if you do a more conservative boost on that 200, but then you crank some 4, and you crank some 1 in sort of these sort of tight Q situations, that fundamental, your brain perceives all 3 of those humps because they're the same note, just different octaves.
Yeah.
Your brain perceives it as all one thing, and as if in real life the fundamental were stronger, because anytime there's a loud fundamental on any sound source, right, though that fundamental has ripples up and below, right, there's overtones and undertones, and so that reinforcement of the octave below is not something people think about a lot, but it makes a pretty drastic difference in the way that the note of any given transient source comes through, and that also spreads all the way over to 808s and pop kicks and anything that you can think of that you might want some note to be there. This is a really cool way of doing that, and so I've been kind of really honing down on that.
I bet does that also help with the translation to smaller speakers? I would assume as well.
Absolutely,
because you're boosting the fundamental and then moving that across the spectrum. you're going to get innately more of that sound at a higher frequency, or like on a phone or something thinner, or mono sources, things like that.
And it's odd because it's what I think people think or want our bass to do. You know what I mean?
We talked about our bass the other week,
which is cool. Yeah, and our bass is dope, but it just has a very specific monoizing and saturating of lower stuff to create sort of upper harmonic situation. But it's so broad a lot of times that it catches anything that's down there, right?
Yeah.
So if you say have a cool ass pop kick that has way too much like weird sort of like that guy in there, on like on a pop kick or something, right? If you use our bass on that, now that also has an octave above it probably that you didn't expect or didn't want to be there. And then also the density, because of the way that harmonics interact, the density of that next to the true fundamental is going to be tighter than it was. So it's going to be harder to clean it out.
Yeah, it's going to be super blurred.
Whereas it's going to be super blurry, right? But then if you are very targeted with your octave situations, you can really lean into that, the idea of even harmonics without generating partials all the way up and down the spectrum, right? Because like we all love the idea of like even ordered harmonics because it's the 2B thing, right? Which is the reinforcement of fundamentals louder than like fifths and so on, partials. But the downside of that is like if you keep making them, then the whole signal sounds saturated. But if you just do a few, it's the benefits without any of the drawbacks.
Yes.
So that's been something I've been really into in the nerdiest way possible.
Yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
So sick.
The best way I could describe it is it sounds like you just like mic'd the drum better, or like tuned the drum better.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And it's like it's super subtle, but I think that like if you're starting a mix and you do that, you're gonna be like, oh, that's pretty subtle. But if you're like knee deep in a mix and now you bypass that, you're like, whoa, that is a
it's gone.
The snare disappears.
Dude,
one of my favorite. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, one of my favorite uses for this thing is twofold. One, from a creative side, a lot of times when I get like more sparse or like unconventional arrangements, say, right? Like there's this one song I was doing where they had no bass and it was just kick and it was like a dance track, right? And it's hard to explain. It's like a pop dance thing, whatever. And you're like, no bass, whoa, yeah, whatever, I get it. No, but the kick itself was tuned kind of, but not exactly. And so I did this thing to rein in the shape of the fundamental all the way through the track, because putting that, moving that fundamental a slight bit over by doing this thing, right? Reinforcing, because like a lot of pop kicks, especially down there, it's like they cover all frequencies because it's just a pitch drop over time. And so like it's going to hit the frequency you want it to, just somewhere in there. And so by picking where you want that to be, you can kind of retune it without actually pitching it and changing any of the sort of like sonic characteristics of the top end. And also like I don't do frequency shifting very often because I find that the phase relationship gets really fuzzy. So this is a good way of doing that. And I tightened it by just sort of like pulling that into the shape of the key of the song, and then having a little bit above and below to keep it a little more bassy, but in a way that was like subtle, because it, especially like pre-compression, this sort of like tucks it into the sound. It's like it was always there. It's like it was always tuned like that, like Josh was saying. And so like on rock stuff too, or like any live drum kit, right? You can trick the ear into thinking that everybody did their job right, which is a wild one.
Yeah,
right? You get stuff
crazy
from, self-recorded whatevers, and you're like, oh man, the fundamental on all of those drums is really obscured, huh? A lot of ring in there that's not what it's supposed to be, huh? And you mic'd maybe a little funny. And then all of a sudden, you've got this very sick, 180 hertz, whatever you wanted to tune the snare to. And then the partials below and above that sort of reinforce that to the point where it's very hard to tell that that's not how that drum sounded originally.
Yeah, that's the thing. It sounds invisible, which I think are the kind of moves that, are the most important. What I want to really try it on is like when you get that low 808 that just doesn't hit as hard as the high ones. And so like lately I haven't really had too much of that, but I know like previously like I've had a lot of that. And so I'm waiting for the next time so I could chop out all the low notes and do that. Because typically what I would do I would just chop up those notes and then like saturate them a bit harder, you know?
Right.
And that typically does a pretty good job, but I'd like to hear that and just see like how invisible it feels, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really sick. I'm gonna have some mixes coming up. I'm gonna have to try that on specifically.
Yep. TM, but yeah.
TM. No, bro, freaking! But, I can see you make. And honestly, like that's a plugin. Straight up, that's a plugin.
I think that might be in the future card situation. I think like I sat down with Lee and Josh and we sort of like shot the shit about what this could do and how something invisible like that really sort of like reinforcing tone in anything would be sick because it's just sort of like, you know, wherever you need that to sit, it can. You know what I mean? So yeah, I feel like that could be
that's definitely a really, really cool idea. So that was cool mixing technique. You got anything else that you're super, super stoked on right now? Change your mastering chain at all? Change your...
I mean, you know, let me look at what I'm doing right now, and I'll tell you.
Okay. Are you mastering your own stuff normally?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So I usually, I almost always do that. I think there's been like maybe like 4 songs in my mixing career that I didn't master. So yeah, I think mastering. Yeah, I think the only thing that I've been really into, which is like not using a certain plugin that I was using for a while.
Okay,
Josh, because I have found that all of the drawbacks are much louder than the benefits of this thing. But I don't want it to sound like shade, so I don't know how to mention that. So maybe
he's talking about God Particle.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he's. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that is. It's crazy how you said
Particle
that.
Is. Okay. All right. You're afraid to make it sound like shit. Yeah. I'm not. God Particle, dog shit. Worst plugin ever. It sounds really good on buses, and
it sounds okay.
At first, if you're on speakers that are high distortion, that plugin rips. So you take it into the car and realize it ruins your low end. And so,
I think the thing is like I really wish there was a way to break it apart because there's some parts of it that are.
I agree.
The multiband I thought was pretty cool.
And I can hear it back there. Yeah, I can hear, you know, parts of it that I'm like, oh, I feel like if I could just isolate that one.
Yeah.
That's what
like, first of all, it doesn't work for anything rock. Okay. So like if you have live drums or live sounding drums, it's not going to work.
Right.
But if you have like a super loud like pop track, right? And you're like, man, my like drums in 808 need some help. Bust them and put God Particle on the drums in 808. It'll rip.
Right.
Because the low band on that is really nice.
Yeah.
And then
the mid range is pretty interesting. But,
And I do I don't like the limiter. I only use Elevate for that.
For a while I was doing God Particle mostly for the high boost on it, honestly. Like I really, really like the high shelf on God Particle.
Yeah, it's
and
cool.
So I was doing that with super low whatever the middle control is. And then limiter off, and then that goes into Elevate. But then once I got Soundtech, it's now just Soundtech's 12K.
Agreed, exactly. Shelf. Soundtech all the way. Because it was literally like I was like, oh, the cool thing that I liked about that other one, but now it's a sick ass EQ plugin that also has other bands.
I need to get the Soundtech. We've been talking about it a good bit.
You have to.
It is.
You should definitely get it.
If you had to ask me what the most like analog sounding invisible type EQ that I've ever heard in my life, it's definitely Soundtech. Like there's something about analog EQs where when you use them, you're like, oh, it sounds like it was recorded that way, and that's how Soundtech.
Yeah, it sounds like it was supposed to be.
That's how Soundtech sounds.
Yeah, because that and also that 23K or 21K, one of the two, sometimes 25, is that very sort of like is it called a band XL EQ? But it's like that very like wild slope because it's still a peak band, right? It's not shelf up there. But it does the like effectively like infinite extension thing, which is very sick. Subtly, obviously, if you use too much of it, all of a sudden it just sounds like electric garbage. But yeah, for sure. And that 12K boost is
I'll use Soundtech.
I'll be like,
because it's that good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've started doing that as like, if I need that like that sheen on like guitars and stuff, as opposed to doing the SSL style boost, this is a better, more targeted way of doing this thing.
I've never been an SSL fan, so typically like high boosts are like strictly Spectre for me. Because
that's fair. That makes sense.
It just sounds
more saturated,
better. You know,
it's smoother.
It's not as
especially
cold,
on vocals because the saturation also kind of has a very slight like de-essing effect to it, so it's not as harsh.
Yeah, for sure.
But Soundtech has been like awesome. Like if I'm mixing a vocal and it's like, oh, I need a little bit more high end, I'll just crank up that.
What was that one EQ
boost.
that Brandon was talking about in the chat the other day, Josh?
The Pulsar.
The Pulsar inductor guy.
It's interesting. The 8200. It looks
cool,
interesting.
But but I'm always on the fence about I don't know, stuff that looks that fancy. I know this sounds crazy, but like sometimes when things look that wild,
I'm in the same boat.
There's some bias that gets shown up, I guess.
Could be.
Where it's like it has to be pretty. Like I'm not knocking it.
No, I don't know. I haven't tried it yet.
I personally notice that I occasionally fall for this trick when I am like getting in my nerdiest mode. I'll be like, oh, this thing looks sick as hell. I'm going to put it on there, whatever. And then I'm playing with it and I'm like, I could just do this with like a regular.
Yeah, it's not introducing anything new.
You know how I just mixed the song yesterday? I literally only used like Kirchhoff and then RComp.
Which is nice. That's a cool,
RComp is still the good.
I mean, RComp is...
Yeah.
Dude, there was... oh, no, don't lose the thought. It was something relevant. Because I rarely say relevant things on this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, one plugin I've been using a ton on vocals is the Purple Audio 76 because...
oh, that's cool.
Like, previously I didn't like it because of how aggressive it is. And then I started using it at the broadcast gig that I do, like the hardware unit, because I really like how it pushes the upper mids in a really pleasant way, which is something previously, like everybody goes through that phase where like upper mids are bad in vocals and then you have to like figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, but they're not.
Yeah,
they're very much needed.
You're doing it wrong.
Yep. Otherwise you lose the
I've been using that as like a tone box on every vocal that I mix now, and I'll do like super fast settings, like 1 dB gain reduction.
Right. Yeah.
Are you paralleling or are you just using it to drive
straight up?
Oh, okay.
Right on there, and
pushing through.
That has been awesome because it's the only plugin that I've used as far as compressors go that really share the same aggressive like tone shaping characteristics as the hardware.
Right.
And so that's been great.
Okay.
I haven't A/B'd it against the Avid one yet, but that's interesting.
I do have one other thing that I do a lot, and it is mastery stuff. True Iron on the 111C. I think it's the weird like German guy or something. Or it's like
Western Electric.
Western Electric.
That's the one that Sylvia Macy would that she had 2 of those racked and runs her mixes through them.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because that one fucks and fucks in like a wild way that like I can't exactly
the Kazrog
quantify. Kazrog True Iron, and then the 111C is just like it makes things hi-fi in a way that I can't explain, which is very cool because I've looked at the EQ graph because I get really nerdy about stuff like that, and it seems like it shouldn't do what it does.
Yeah, weird. I agree. It's probably my favorite saturation plugin.
And that joint's only like $40.
Yeah, it's like the best bang for your buck ever.
Also Kazrog just makes.
What's funny is the 111C is that famous Sylvia Macy one that Those
Right,
transformers are so expensive because of her. It's actually ridiculous. Yes, because I was like, that's sick. I want to get a couple.
She made them so expensive.
The 1166A is the same one that's in an 1176. And so what I'll do is if I have a vocal that needs more of like that upper mid bump, you put that at the end of the vocal chain and it rips. It is so good.
Absolutely. For sure. And then I do like the what's the other one? I need to pull it up. Hold on. It is the German. The other one I like is the 4001B, the German master compressor thing.
Yeah.
Because that one's cool too. Those are my most used because in my case, like, I'm using them pretty subtly mastery situation, like just a little bending, if you will.
A little touch up here and there.
But they're but they're both very sick. And that whole plugin beats
ass. I'm gonna have to get it. I'm gonna have to get it.
Yep. It's worth it, man. Like, it's just one of those things, you know? Like, and also, like, I love plugins that make things like 4% better or something. I know that sounds stupid, right? But like, it's the kind of thing where like I have so many plugins that I have too many plugins, but also I have so many plugins that do infinite amounts of things, right? Like, I can make any sound like whatever. I have, you know, drastic match EQs and crazy reverbs and all kinds of whatever. But there are certain plugins that you come across and you're like, oh, this just makes it sound better than it did before, and now that's it. I'm done. I handled it. You know, that kind of thing. And like that's how I feel about the True Iron. That's how I feel about the Sontech too. Same situation where it's like, if you do that little top end boost or whatever, you're like, oh, it just sounds better now. Good, nice. Hey, great. I didn't have to work, you know, sort of like worry about it so much.
The other one that I really like, good. The other one that I really like is the 108X, and I never looked up what that was used in.
Is that the
one? Ampex 350, I think, from what I'm seeing on Google. Yep. And then it's also apparently was used in UA gear, and I don't know what yet, but the fact that it was in the Ampex is pretty cool because every other day I kind of have this strange thought of like, maybe I should just buy one.
Let me just get an Ampex,
just get an Ampex 350. Like, that would be sick.
Hey guys, have you thought about getting an Ampex? Absolutely.
Those are good. Those are good shouts. Honestly, those are both really good shouts for a, especially if you're doing a lot of mixing and you want a nice, good, polish, kind of cheap plugin. Because that's crazy that's only $40 or $30 or whatever. That's crazy.
It's definitely the secret sauce. I picked that up from Baines because he would put that at the end of Thug's vocal. And I always really liked how transparent his vocals are. And so he does that, and then he'll either run the stay level from Arturia or the Audioscape stay, which I heard isn't anything like the actual one, which is strange.
Yeah, but if it's flavored, it is
and
what it is, right?
I love the tone of stay levels. I would just straight up track through one.
Talk about aggressive. Facts,
dude. It was great. I loved it so much.
Because I picked up True Iron from Matt Huber, who's like does like some Valley and stuff.
Matt's I'm trying to get him on the podcast.
Goated.
Matt's the goat, bro. When it comes to that, style of mixing, especially, no one's getting even close to him, bro.
No, every time he drops a mix or like a new, you know, Niley or one of those kinds of bands comes out, like I straight sit down and study it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Because I'm like I want to be in this lane, and this is the kind of stuff that I end up mixing a lot. And I'm like, I need to know like how good I need to be to keep up as much as I can with this guy.
My gosh. And it's crazy. He's also, you know what sucks? He's the nicest person.
What?
He's the nicest person. I want him to suck so that I have a reason to hate him.
Then you're like, yeah. And like I've talked to him a few times. Like,
same.
DMs and whatever, and he's so chill, and I'm like, damn it, bro, no, you can't be this good and nice.
Your mixes can't slap this much and also just be a genuinely good dude. That's not fair.
Yeah, come on, man. Come on, dude. Save some for the rest of us, you know?
But I learned. I think I learned a bunch of Waves Factory tricks. He loves that Waves Factory stuff. So
because I mean,
he so I learned a couple Waves Factory tricks from him. He also was showing off Sam Pure's compressor that I thought that was really interesting. I haven't touched it yet, but I heard it was pretty cool.
I think I did. I don't gravitate to sort of like. I think. Wait, which plugin was that? Was it a 3A or something? Or am I wrong?
No, it was a multi. So it was
it's 31176s and then a
3A.
Oh,
yeah,
3A on that thing.
Well,
really.
So it's it really does. It's one of the better ones that I've heard. But it's like the blue. It's like the blue face, the black face, and then the the three different visions, and then the 3A. Okay. But it's like his modded versions of them made into a plugin. So yeah,
I see.
Instead of having to buy a bunch of plugins, you get it all in one, which is kind of nice.
That is very sick.
Hey, I feel like we're winding down. This is a good place to call it for the day because we've also been going for over an hour, even with our little 10-minute phone explosion break. Yeah. So, listeners, thank you for listening. Check us out everywhere. Aaron, you got socials to plug?
I got my Instagram, which is at Aaron T Pace, and then I just have my website, which is mixedbyap.com. And that's it.
Go hire Aaron to to write you good songs. Or mix your record, or and follow us at Josh actually changed his handle again after we had a whole conversation about how he changed his handle.
Well, because like Josh writes songs implies that
you only write songs.
I only write songs.
You write songs.
Then my full name, everybody always spells my name wrong. I was like, that's too hard. And so I was like thinking, and I was like, it'd be really funny if I changed my Instagram handle to something like Josh Did It Again, and it was available. And so now it's Josh Did It Again.
You had to.
Josh Did It Again, and that's what I've been tagging you.
That is pretty good.
So,
I do like that.
And then music by Drew for everywhere else from me. Don't do it again. I will.
I think it's pretty funny though, because you can't tell if it's a Britney Spears reference or if it's like a cool producer tag.
I think it's a cool producer tag.
I think it's funny. So.
Yeah. And the podcast is at Home Studio Hangout. Once again, Aaron, thanks for coming on and hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next week. Later.